What's up guys? So in this video we're going to be building an Airbnb style image carousel using React, TypeScript and a React library called React Splide. So if I go to the Airbnb website and I refresh, see it has this nice looking skeleton loading and also this slider. So if I come to the one we'll be building and I refresh, see it's basically the same, and I can also toggle between the images, and as always it's responsive. So if we go to mobile view, let me just bring this up and change to phone. You can see it's responsive on mobile as well. I'll leave a link to the code in the description. Let's dive right into the video. Alright, so I have VS Code open and I have already installed or created a Vite application. So if you have a blank folder open, just enter npm create Vite at latest and use a period sign to create it on your your root folder. I already have mine created and I brought in the data we'll be using. So it's more of a mock data because we're going to be simulating an API request. And if I go to the index.html file, I also brought in fonts on some icon, and if I go to the index, I brought in the puppies font. So those are just the major changes. The rest things should be the same, and again the link to this project will be in the description. So first thing to do is to run our server. So close this out and open it right here, and we don't need this anymore. Okay, so we have an app. So the first thing we want to do is to come to this app and we'll add some content. So the first thing I will do, I will first of all give this class of container, and inside it I will just say this should be Airbnb experiences, and underneath this should show the listings. So we want to display the listings right here. So the first thing we'll do is to bring in the data. So I'll say import, I think I called it mock listings, and if I go to that data file, you see it doesn't have, we didn't specify a type for it. So what I will do is I will come right to this source folder. I'll create a new folder called libs, and inside that folder I'll create a types.ts file, and I would just define the types we have right here. So if I go back, I can say this should be export interface, and I'll call this listing data. Inside it we have an ID number, I think, yeah, this is what we want. So we can close this out as well. Now what we want to do is that we want to store this data in a state so that we can be able to map over it and actually display it on our UI. So I'll create a variable, or a state rather, I'll call it listings and set listings, and this should be a use state. and by default this should be an empty array. And remember, since we have the types for this listing, we'll just pass in the types here. So we'll say listing data. Cool. And this should also be an array, not listing data, an array as well. All right, so like I said, we will be simulating an API call using set timeout. So I would just say simulate API call, and you can also use an actual database. It's going to work out fine. I'm just too lazy to set up a database. So put this in a use effect, and this should be an empty array, because this should just, we need this to run only once. And inside it, we'll create a function called fetch listings, and this function will be an async function. And inside this, we'll just say await, and we'll just say new promise, and we'll just resolve. Let me just accept this. So basically, we're just awaiting a new promise and showing all the data after 2 seconds. So we just set the listing to the mock listings, and I just realized I didn't spell listings correct, so it should be listings. All right, cool. So before this data actually show on our UI, we want to show a loading state, and then once this data has been fetched, we'll set that loading state to false. So I'll create the loading state right here and say loading. I'll say this should be set loading. I'll set it to true. Then once we have the data, we'll set it to false, and then we'll just call the fetch listings right here. All right, cool. Now what we have to do is check. So we say if it's loading, then for now we'll just say loading, else we want to display the data. So I will put this inside an image slider component, which we're going to create right now. So inside the source folder, I'll create a components folder, call this image slider tsx, and I'll spin up a boilerplate. If I go back, I can import this. Alright, cool. So basically, we want to pass these listings down to this image slider. So I would say this should be listings. And right now we're having a TypeScript error, so we need to accept the props on the image slider. So I'll save this, go back to the image slider and say interface, call this image slider props, and I'll say the listings should be the listings data. Now also import it right here. Cool. So I will just pass in the listing. This should be listings. I think I need to turn Codium off. All right, so it's off now. Then I can change this back to listings, and I will pass in the image slider props right here. Cool. So now we want to display all this. So this should be listings as well. We want to display these listings. Now I can come right here, get rid of this, and I'll give this a class, call this listings. Inside this, I will map over each listing. Create another div right here. I'll give this a class of listing card and also a key of listing.id, so that React will be able to update it when it changes. So I'll just pass in the title for now to see if it's actually coming through. So say listen to title. If we go back now, you can see all the title. All right, cool. So we want to display the images first, and as you can recall from the intro, the images were inside a carousel. So we're going to be using React Splide in order for us to achieve this. So I will go to React Splide. So as you can see, it's a lightweight library and is written in TypeScript. So it says there's no dependency and no lighthouse errors. And what I love about it is how it's easy to use, and it comes with a ton of customization options right out of the box, like touch support. I think if I go down, yeah, touch support, autoplay, responsive settings, and basically it just takes the complexity out of building um, beautiful carousels. So let's head over to the get started, and this is the default one. I think if you are not using a framework like React, this should be the command you'll be using, but we need it for React. Yeah, so you have integration for React, Vue, and Servlet. So we can use, click on React, then copy this command right here, go back to your terminal and paste the command. I already have it installed, so I won't try installing it again. So if you have it installed, the next thing you want to do is to import it right here. So we say import Splide, and also import Splide slide from Splide to React Splide. So if I head back to the docs, I'm just basically importing this, and there are still some default CSS themes. So I'm going to copy this one, go back and paste this right here. Cool. So in order to use it, it's fairly simple. So what we'll do is inside here, inside this div, get rid of this one, call the Splide, and by default this have an option attribute. So if I say option, this is not coming through. What's that? Could not find declaration file types. So I guess the type will not installed. So what I'll do is I will go to the libs and create a new file called splide.d.ts. Then I'll copy over the types for the Splide library. Alright, so I just copied this over from the internet. So basically with this now we can have autocomplete. So if I head back, close this and head back, see that error is gone, and I think I can have access to the options right here. So before we start adding different styles to this option, let me first of all get rid of it. So this slide is the container for individual slide. So if I go back here, you can see that the slide is a container. Then this one holds each individual images, and there's also a slide track. So you can just go through the docs and just try stuffs out. So I'll head back, and inside this we'll create the slide, we'll bring it the slide, but before that we'll say the listing rather, then we'll get the images, because the images are is inside an array, and I will say and we'll just map over the images, and this should be image, and inside it we'll bring in the slide, and this should have a key. And right now, since this is the image, you can still use this as a key if you want, but I will use index. Just say this should be the index, and inside this we'll bring in another div, and I'll give this a class of image slider. Inside it, passing the image right here, this should be the image. So let's check what we have so far. So we have all images, but they are not looking good. So the next thing to do is to add the share button. So still inside this div right here, I'll come underneath this and create a button tag, and I'll bring in that share icon. So the share icon is fa solid fa share nodes, and also give this a class called this share button. Then underneath this, we'll create another div to hold the remaining data. So we'll say, let me give this a class of listing info. Then we'll create an h2 for the title. So just call this listing title. This should be the listing title, and our p tag, and we'll give this a class of listing host, and this should be listing host. Then have another p tag, give this a class listing price, and this should be the listing price. All right, cool. So we can't even see most of all the content. Okay, I can see this one. So let's just style this up. So I'll shrink this down to somewhere like this. Okay, now go to our index of css, and first of all get rid of the margin, get rid of the padding, and I'll set the box size into border box. Okay, then for the body we give is the font family, I'll set it to Poppins, else default to sans serif. Then we can for now let's just give this image a max width 100%, so we can see them properly. All right, cool. And by default we've not even added the options where you can see that we can do couple of stuff with it. So let's still style it up before adding the options right here. So for the container, I will say the max width should be 1200 pixels and center it on the screen. Saying inline of auto, add a padding of 1.2 rem, and also add the margin top of 3 rem. Alright, cool. So for the H1, give this a font size of 2 rem, center it on the screen, and give this a margin bottom of 2 rem as well. Alright. Then the image slider, which is this right here, bring it and say image slider, and inside it we add the position of relative, and also give this a height of 250 pixels. So we're adding a position of relative because we'll be setting this button to absolute in a minute. So this image slider will target the image itself now, and we'll give this a width of 100% and a height of 100%, so that you can inherit this 250 pixels, and also give this a border radius of 1 rem, and we'll set the object fit to cover. So most times once you style it, it randomly gives this weird stuff. So what you have to do is to refresh the page and it fixes it. Alright, so next thing to do is to style the share button. I can't even see it right now. What is that? So let's add some styles right here. So we say share button, and let's set the position to absolute, set the top to 1 rem, and also set the right to 1 rem. Let's see if it's going to show. Okay, it's coming right here. So we'll set the border to none. We'll set the background color to white. We'll give this a height of 30 pixels and a width of 30 pixels, and border radius will be 50%. Okay, but it's not still centered. So to do that, we just say display of grid, say place items center. So it's properly centered right now. Alright, cool. For this listing info, we just add padding. So I will say the listing info, give this a padding top of 1 rem. You can see it right here. Then for the title, so say listing title, I think that's what we called it. Yeah, so set this to font size of like 1.1 rem. Okay, cool. Then for the host, set the listing host, I'll change the color to 717171. Alright, so we'll leave the price as it is, but we need spacing for each of these. So what I will do is to go back right here, and before this I'll say listing card, and we'll target each of the listing card apart from the last one, and add a margin bottom of 3 rem. So let's see. Alright, cool. But as we begin to get bigger screens, this is not looking good. So what we'll do is to say on the media query right here, say at media, say min width. So from 768 pixels and up, we'll grab the listings. So the listings is basically this. I'll set this a display of grid. I'll say grid template column should be repeat 1 fr. So 2 columns, 1 fraction each, then add a gap of 1 rem. Then we'll copy this and say from 1000 to 200 pixels and up, change this to 4 columns and get rid of the gap. So right now I can get rid of this, and this should align properly. So we've not added the skeleton loading effect, but this is already coming nice. So we can head back to the image slider, and there's a few options we can add. So if I click on the options, so if I go back, and first of all you notice that when I get to the end, it just stops. It doesn't loop through. So I can set this to type, and this should be loop. So again, you can go to the docs, and if you go to options right here, you can see all the options to use. So everything is right here. So just to save time, I will quickly just add the ones we'll be needing. So also add how many image you want per page. So I'll just set this to 1. I think the default one is 1. And this error is coming because this is supposed to be inside double curly brackets. So let's try this again. So the type now says to loop, number of page, we set this to 1. This should be column. Then we can also add a gap if we want to between each of the image. So set this to like 0.2 rem, and we can set how fast we want it to go. So set this to 700. I think it's 700 milliseconds. Then we'll add arrows. So the arrows is true by default. So I think, yeah. So there's no need to set it up. And we also have the pagination right here as well. So it's still giving us a TypeScript error. Okay, this should be a number, not string. All right, cool. So we also need to style these buttons right here to look like the one on the Airbnb site. So if I inspect the buttons, you can see that they have the class that you can just select and customize. So I will close this out and go to our index file. And let's just do this right here. So this will be Splide underscore arrows, and we'll set the width to like 32 pixels, and we'll set the height to 32 pixels, and we'll set the background color. Let me just set it to red so you see what we're styling. So if you go back, you can see that this is what we want to style, but I'll change this to white. And we also want to style the icon. So I can do that by saying Splide arrow, and it has an SVG, or it's an SVG rather. Then we'll change the field to 171717. Then also set the font size to 0.75 rem, and also at the transition I'll set this to all at 3 seconds easy out. Cool. Alright, so it has this color by default, but when we hover on it, we want the color to be darker. So you can copy this right here and say on hover, we'll target the SVG and set the field to this dark color. So if I hover, it's not really obvious, but it's actually coming true. So if I head back, by default we don't want these arrows to show. We only want them to show when we hover on this listing card. So we can set where should we do this? Okay, let's do this right here and say the Splide arrows, these should be double arrows, and let's just put this inside the listing card. So say listing card, set the opacity to 0, visibility should be hidden, and also the transition of all 0.3 seconds is enough. Then when we hover on the listing card, we want the Splide arrows to have an opacity of 1 and the visibility of visible. So right now you don't see it, but when we hover on it, it's kicking right in. And also we set this to loop, but it's not looping. If yours is acting like that, you just have to refresh, and hopefully that error is gone, so it's looping as it should. All right, cool. So I guess we're done with it. The next thing to do is to create this our skeleton animation. So I will head back to the components and I'll call this skeleton listing tsx crfce, and for this I'll give this a class name. I'll call this skeleton loader. The inside of it, you see we have for listing right here. So what I will do is to put in the curly brackets, and I will just pass in 1 2 3 4, and basically I'm going to just map over them and say you should be inside the div. So basically we want to just display 4 divs. Then we'll give this class name of skeleton Skeleton card. For some weird reason, this is giving me a tough time to spell. I also add the key right here and set it to the item. Then inside it, we want to create a div for the image. So just give this a class skeleton image. So this div will be for the image. We also need for the info, but this will be inside another div called skeleton info, and inside the skeleton info div we'll have we just want to create 0 other divs for the title, the host, and the price. So I would say this should be div, and paste this in and call this title. I'll copy this 2 more times. This should be the host and this should be the price. Alright, cool. So right now, if I get rid of this, I can go back to our app and just pass it right here. Say skeleton listing. So if I refresh now, nothing should show as it should because we've not added styles for it. So go back to our CSS and just do it right here. Say skeleton section. So say skeleton, first of all, get the card, which is, let me open this backup, which is this card right here. I'll give it a background color of white. I'll set the border radius to 0.75 rem. And for the image, we'll say skeleton image, and we'll set the height to the height we set initially for the image, which was 250. So set it to 250, and the border radius should be 1 rem. The background color this time is going to be E0 E0 E0, and the animation we're going to create it in a bit, but we'll give this a name of pause, and this should be 1.5 seconds, and it's be infinite, so it's not stopping till the product shows. Alright, cool, but this won't kick in because we've not created the keyframes for it. For the skeleton info, I will just still think, just to make it easier, I will just add it right here and say skeleton info because it's fairly the same thing. Then if I head back, I can just tack on the skeleton title, the host, and the price. It should be skeleton price. I'll give it a height of 1 rem, 3 of them. Then I'll also add a little border radius to it of like 0.5 rem. Then I'll give it a background color and it should be the same as this one. So I'll copy this, paste it right here, and I'll add a margin bottom of 0.5 rem for each of them, and I'll also add this animation to it. Alright, cool. So let me quickly open the Airbnb website again. So I have the Airbnb website open. So if I refresh, you notice that the width for each of these is different. So to achieve that, yeah, we'll just grab the title and give this larger width of like 70 pixels, 70% rather. We'll grab the host and give this a width of 50%. Then we'll grab the price and we just give this a width of like 30%. So the last thing we're going to do is to create this pause animation. So we can do that by saying at keyframes, and we'll pass in the name right here. I will say at 0%, we want the opacity to be like 6. At 50%, we want the opacity to be 1. Then at 100%, I want to set the opacity to be back to this initial one, which is 6. So we'll save. So if we refresh now, you can see they are coming through, but they are being stacked on top each other. So what we're going to do is to come here and make sure we grab the skeleton loader class and just append it right here. Add the period to it and do the same right here as well. So if we refresh now, you can see it's kicking in. And you can also, let's do this again. You can also play with the width if you choose to. So let's say it looks on mobile again. That's nice. Alright, cool. Alright guys, so that's the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful. If you still got time, you can also watch this video where I created a testimonial slider using React Splide.